In order to learn how to put our faces inside paintings, there's a couple of tools that we've used that we're going to pull together, and with some practice, be able to pull an image, put our face inside a painting. So here's the original painting I started with. It is a portrait by the French painter Ingres, spelled Ingres, or whatever that matters. Here I am. This is what I'm aiming to get something to look like. This particularly good example I've done. I don't know whether my example will get this good in the end, but there's me. And here's my original face. It's a rather poorly color adjusted image of me taken by a student a couple years ago. Not all that flattering, but we're going to take this picture and we're going to stick it in here. Now, if we look at our image size, you'll see that the original painting that we're working with is quite small. Yes, it's 8 by 10, but it's only 96 pixels per inch, so it's about a third of the size that we need. Anything below 1,000 here is it's too small to work with directly. And we're going to deal with the idea that we've got two different resolutions of our image. The camera, which is very high resolution, and the internet image, which is low resolution. It's something you may run into at some point in time dealing with images from the internet. To be able to deal with that and match up those resolutions is it's just a good trick to know how to do, because it's something we get stuck with periodically. So here we go. I'm going to open a new file. I'm going to start with setting it to inches. I'm going to put it me in a painting 2, and I'm going to call it, make it 8 by 10. If your image that you're working with from the internet is much larger than 1,000 pixels in both directions, then you can maybe do an 11 by 14, but very safely we do 8 by 10 at 300. So I'm going to take the painting and select the whole thing and copy it. And I'm going to paste it in. You can see how small it is. Scaling it again using the shift key so that I don't change and distort its proportions, otherwise it will look strange. And all of my work is done. This is a step that has to be done before everything else, because we're now increasing the number of pixels in the original painting, and then when we paste the photograph of my face in, we'll be reducing the number of those pixels, so we'll be meeting in the middle, and that will increase the chances of a better quality image. Notice I have a background and my layer 1. So we're going to go here to my face, and we're going to use the lasso tool, which is a free hand selection tool. We can use the addition and subtraction to select the right amount, but as I select on this, you'll notice there's this option here on the options bar of a feather. I typed it in at 25 pixels, which means that the last 25 pixels from what I select will be faded from the edge of the image. So I'm just taking the part of me that looks like me. You can see how wiggly my edge is, but it straightens up because of the feather. If I want to add more to it, here I am selected on the Add to selection. Notice the little plus on my screen. If I want to subtract from it, I can do that as well, like that. So I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to paste me in. Now my face is about the right size on this one. Yours might be larger or smaller. So first thing we're going to do is try to put me in there and figure out whether my face is the right size. We have to try to get the photograph of your face to line up with the theoretical skull of the person underneath. Otherwise the anatomy won't look correct. So we're looking to do that first. So taking the photograph at the proper angle is real helpful. I think mine's a little bit off because I didn't have a chance, I couldn't line it up myself. But really practice trying to line that angle of someone's face up exactly. So it will make your life so much easier as we move to this point. I'm going to zoom in slightly so we can see this a little bit better. Too far. Here we go. Zooming in. To be able to see if I've got this lined up correctly, I'm going to temporarily change the opacity of my face layer so that I can see both my face and her face. And I want to see if I can rotate and line up the features of our faces so it appears that this might actually be me. That doesn't look too bad. Okay, there we go. Put it back on. Now that looks like, aside from the fact that my skin tone is way off, that it might actually be me. So it fits realistically that my face is the correct size for her skull. So you can see a couple things. The edge of my face, we notice the skin tones, and the values of the image are way off. My face is super dark and the face of the painting is much lighter. this is where we need to use our evaluation skills. We need to recognize that the image here is too yellow because the face from the photograph is very yellow and the painting is pinkish gray. Also, that the image is too saturated, meaning the colors are way too intense. There's no gray in them. They're also too dark. So these are steps that we need to take to adjust this to match the skin underneath. In your basic image, those are the things we'll deal with. Then we'll go in and erase edges and try to blend things further as we go. So the first thing I'm going to do is try to do a color balance. I'm not going to work with the adjustment layers because it will change everything underneath this layer. So I'm going to simply change on this layer. So while that's technically incorrect, it is a bit destructive in terms of the philosophy of editing. Get ready to use your history to undo things, but it is actually the easiest way to do what we're trying to achieve in this piece. So I'm going to go to color balance. I'm going to try to remove my yellows. You can see that suddenly my face became much pinker as a result, almost in the correct value range. I'm just going to simply do that this time. Now I'm going to try to make it lighter. I can try that with my levels too. I can try to make my image lighter in terms of levels, which I'm going to bring it pretty light because I know I can go back in and darken some of my features. That makes things a lot easier. Work in my histogram there. I slid the white values to create whites. I moved the mid value gray down to lighten the entire value range of my image. And if we look at this from a distance again, you're going to start to see that it's not so far off at this point. It's not so far off. We still have some changes to make, but we can do that with some of the other tools. We haven't used the eraser tool, and this is one that's really helpful. It's set currently in brush mode. I have it set also to a 15% opacity. When it's set at a 100% opacity, what that does is it will erase in every single click and every swipe of the eraser 100% of the layer. I'm going to go back in here and I'm going to set this back at around 15% because at around 15% each time I click it will erase 15% of my image. Now going back to the feather, if I just make my painting layer invisible, you can see that the feather created this soft edge, and by erasing now I'm going to further that edge fading as we go. So each time I click, it's going to work very slowly. It's the best to work slowly. That way I don't have to take out as much. My idea here is I'm going to show some of my skin tone as well as the person underneath. If my face works in there correctly, I can do that. Now, at a certain point, I don't want to change my face underneath because I don't necessarily like the way hers looks either. So I'm going to go in and use the burn and dodge tools, which we used. We practiced these already. Dodging, of course, lightens things, so I can selectively lighten certain parts of my face. Whiten the eyes here because they got a bit dark. Brighten up maybe along the cheekbones to create some highlight the way a painter would create some dramatic highlight. Think Kim Kardashian and her highlighting makeup there. I can brighten up some of these things. I can also change my exposure to something that's much milder so that as I work at it, it doesn't erase nearly as much as we go through this. This is starting to look better here, but my face is really washed out. There's no detail to it, and there's very little contrast to it. So here I'm going to go and burn in some of the details in and around my eyes to create a little bit of drama there. Make my lips a little bit darker. So perhaps that's going to create a little bit more detail there. I look like I have a fever since there's no color in my cheeks. This is where the sponge tool comes in handy. If I go in to saturate the color of my skin in certain parts, it will actually put some of that color back in. A little bit of flesh color. A little bit of color in my eyes as we go through. But as we look closely at this, you can see this is a very photographic quality, and the painting is really soft, and they don't currently match. When you get your image to a point where you're happy, and I could play with this for a really long time. to continue to adjust these parts of the image till it starts to match. Notice her eyebrows are starting to show up. This is where we used the clone tool. We learned the clone tool for this reason. If I go in and I actually remove her eyebrows, as strange as that may look, her eyebrows will not come peeking through my face as we do this. So it's part of the reason why we learned the clone tool for this assignment. I'm going to go back to this layer. I'm going to nudge me over. I think I look a little bit better there. And I'm going to erase my hair here so it doesn't, so where it comes over top of her face, it comes over top of mine. There. Now, once I get this to the point where I like it, and I'm not thrilled with this, but I don't want to spend forever playing, but once you get to the point where you like it, I'm going to take my two layers and I'm going to merge them. I did that by hitting the Control E buttons. Here on my Mac I used Command E, but on a PC it's Control E, and that glued those layers together. I'm going to go under the filter gallery and I want to create a texture that will unify the two pieces together, both layers that I just glued together. So here we go. I'm going to go back in and I'm going to go to fit on in view. I can also do fit to screen, and so here's my layer currently in cutout mode. Ones that tend to work well are the paint daubs, and I can zoom in using these here, and what you see here is it's creating with my sliders some level of control to put the same filter over top of both the painting and my face. Paint daubs works sometimes, palette knife works sometimes. Obviously you have to make some adjustments to it to be able to create the correct textures. I tend to like rough pastels because I like that texture. I have yet to find a reason to use plastic wrap, but I like the rough pastels, so I can control my stroke length and the detail in it till it's something I like, and I don't want to lose the quality of the original painting, just enough texture to make it look like it belongs. So I get to this point and I can go back and evaluate my image. I think it's still a little bit orange, so I'm going to desaturate one more time this part here with a really light flow and just to soften things. And I can look back at my image and yeah, it looks like that's me now. Not a very attractive me, suddenly brunette and in this old-fashioned dress, but I tend to like this image a bit better. I edited it a little bit differently, but you can see where I got the same look, and I could continue at this point to go back in and play with it. But that's the basic step of how we go about moving your face into a painting. At this point, I would save it as a JPEG and upload it to the drive for my finished project.